I've never been the type to jump to conclusions or make a mountain out of a molehill. I always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, especially when it comes to someone I married, my wife Lisa. We'd been together for 8 years, built a life, had a dog, a nice house, and I thought everything was solid. Or so I thought. Lately, though, I started noticing small things. She was more distant, snapping at me over nothing, avoiding certain conversations, and always texting or looking at her phone when she thought I wasn't paying attention. At first, I told myself it was stress from work or maybe her period. But then came the subtle shifts that made me really suspicious. Her phone started disappearing when I entered the room. She'd get defensive if I looked over her shoulder when she was texting, which was weird because she was never that secretive before. The real red flag was her changing her schedule. She claimed she was working late or had meetings, but I caught her slip once. I was in the garage, digging through some old boxes, and I saw her purse on the table. I wasn't snooping, just looking for some batteries, but I noticed her phone was buzzing constantly. Out of curiosity, I peeked at the screen. There were messages from some guy named Mark. Nothing inappropriate on the surface, just casual stuff. But the tone was different, more flirtatious. I saw her reply to him with this snarky tone, like she was baiting him. I felt a punch of anger then, but I told myself maybe I was overthinking it. Then came the day I accidentally found something that knocked me to my knees. I was in the bedroom looking for my keys and I saw her laptop open on the desk. I wasn't trying to pry, I just wanted to grab the keys and go, but her messages popped up. They were from a guy named Tyler and the conversation was explicit. She'd been sending him photos talking about what they did last weekend. The messages were detailed. I could see her describing their environmental tests, which I now realize were actually code for the sex they had in her words. I couldn't believe it. She was lying to me, hiding something huge. I felt sick. My stomach twisted. All those doubts I'd buried came rushing back. How long has this been going on? Was I just a fool, trusting her, building a life around her? I wanted to scream, but I held it in. The flood of betrayal was overwhelming. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence was right there, staring me in the face. I had to confront her. I knew I couldn't keep this quiet, not anymore. The questions burned in my head. How long? Why? Did she even care? I thought about the future, about everything we'd shared, and I realized I was in the middle of a nightmare I never saw coming. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at her laptop, her phone, trying to process what I'd seen. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her lips on Tyler's messages, the way she described their sessions, and the way she'd lied about everything. I felt rage building up. This wasn't just cheating. It was like she'd completely betrayed the foundation of what I thought we had. By morning, I knew I had to confront her. I was furious, but I also felt this strange calm, as if I'd already decided what I needed to say. I called her for breakfast, and she was her usual bitchy self, trying to brush me off, acting like I was bothering her. That annoying, snarky tone she always used when she didn't want to deal with something serious. I saw right through it. She knew I was onto her and she didn't care. When she finally sat down at the table, I just laid it out. I told her I knew about Tyler, about her messages, and about everything she'd been hiding. Her face went blank for a second, then she started to lie about how Tyler was just a coworker, how I was reading too much into it. But I didn't let her spin her web of bullshit. I pulled out the screenshots from her laptop. Her expression changed immediately, her eyes widened, her face flushed. She tried to deny it, but the truth was out there. Her reaction. She got defensive, of course. She started calling me paranoid, saying I was overreacting, that I didn't trust her. She said, "It's not what you think," and then the famous line, "We never actually had sex." Like that made it okay. I told her it didn't matter whether they'd fucked or not. The fact was she lied and she'd been sneaking around behind my back. She spat at me, calling me insecure, accusing me of being jealous. That's when I realized she'd been gaslighting me from the start. She's a real bitch when she wants to be, always twisting things, always trying to make me feel like I was losing it. Honestly, the whole thing made me sick. Watching her lie and deny, I felt a mix of anger, disappointment, and this deep, painful sense of betrayal. I never thought she'd do something like this, not to me. I'd always been loyal, dedicated. and she just threw all that away for whatever the hell Tyler was offering her in those sick, environmental tests. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that she'd been so brazen about it, so casual, like it was nothing. That confrontation was the start of a long, ugly process. She stormed out after I told her I knew everything, screaming at me about how I was paranoid and insecure. She said she needed space, that she was not happy, and that I was clinging. I knew she was lying even then. She was just trying to get away with more, but I also knew I couldn't go back. I watched her walk out of my life that morning, feeling like I'd just been punched in the stomach. The worst part, knowing that I'd been so blind, so trusting, and that she'd been screwing around this whole time right under my nose. I felt hollow, like I'd lost everything I ever believed in. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't eat properly. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sneering face, those messages, the way she lied without batting an eye. It was like watching a train wreck I couldn't look away from. I thought I knew her, hell, I thought I knew us, and suddenly everything was shattered. That trust I spent years building, gone in an instant. It felt like I was walking around in a fog, trying to make sense of the betrayal, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, even though I knew deep down it wasn't about me. I started digging more. I couldn't help myself. I went through her phone, her emails, her social media. I needed every piece of evidence I could find. I couldn't believe how brazen she'd been, hiding her affair in plain sight. She'd even deleted some messages, but I was quicker. I found backups, screenshots, and enough proof to make a lawyer's head spin. The thing that hurt the most was realizing how little she cared about the damage she'd done. To her, it was just some game, some way to feel alive or in control. One night, I finally sat down and thought about what I wanted to do next. No way I was going to let her spin her lies anymore. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time with my terms. I'd tell her I knew everything, that there was no way she could manage to deny this. I wanted her to see I wasn't some fool anymore. I also knew I needed to plan my next move carefully because I wasn't about to let her continue to screw around with my life and my head. I reached out to a lawyer, got some advice, and started to prepare myself. I knew I'd be filing for divorce soon, but I also wanted to make sure I had all my ducks in a row. I was determined not to let her manipulate me anymore. I'd been naive for too long, trusting her blindly, but now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, selfish bitch who thought she could get away with anything. I wasn't going to let her win, not without a fight. I also felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that I finally knew the truth, and sadness because I realized I'd lost the person I thought I'd spend my life with. I guess I'd been in denial for too long, and now I had to face the aftermath. The confrontation with her was worse than I expected, but also somehow liberating. I called her again, told her I knew about Tyler, about everything she'd been hiding. She tried her usual deflections, saying I was paranoid, that I was overreacting, that she didn't mean anything by it. She even had the nerve to say she was confused and needed space. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I had the screenshots, the messages, everything I needed to prove she'd been lying for months. Her face twisted with anger, and she spat back that I was just jealous and insecure, that I wasn't enough for her and that she deserved better. That moment was a turning point. I could see her trying to manipulate me, trying to make me doubt myself, but I refused to fall for it. I told her I was done, that I was filing for divorce. The look she gave me, pure venom, made it clear she didn't think she'd get caught, let alone get called out like this. She sneered at me and said, "You're overreacting, you're crazy, you're insecure." I felt a surge of fury. I didn't bother arguing anymore. I just told her to pack her shit and leave. If she thought she could come back or fix this, she was dead wrong. That night, everything hit me like a freight train. I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty space where she used to sit. All those years, all those plans gone. I felt a deep, painful emptiness. The betrayal cut so deep that I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust again. But as I sat there, I realized something else. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I'd be stronger. I'd rebuild my life even if it meant starting over from scratch. The next morning I started packing her stuff. It was surreal, like I was doing it in a daze. Every item I boxed up reminded me of how much I'd given her, how blindly I'd trusted her. As I carried her clothes out to the car, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I knew this was the right move, but it still hurt to see her leaving after everything. I kept telling myself I deserved better. I deserved honesty, loyalty, someone who wouldn't cheat and lie. I told myself I'd be okay, even if my heart was breaking. I also reached out to my lawyer, scheduled the divorce papers, and started planning my next steps. I knew this wasn't just about ending the marriage. It was about reclaiming my dignity. That betrayal had broken me in so many ways, but I was determined not to let it define me. I learned that even the strongest relationships can crumble in an instant when honesty is replaced with lies. I'd been naive to think she loved me, but now I saw her for what she really was. A selfish, manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with everything. I guess that's what hurt the most, realizing I'd been a fool, and now I had to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was solid but was just an illusion. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding what I could of my life. I kept busy with work, avoided home as much as possible, and tried to focus on myself. The house felt emptier than ever without her, but I knew I couldn't let her betrayal consume me. I kept reminding myself that I deserved honesty and respect, something she clearly never intended to give. Still, every so often, I caught myself replaying that night, those messages, her lies, and my own foolish trust. It's like a wound that keeps bleeding if I don't keep my mind busy, but I also knew I had to sit with it and accept what happened. There was a strange moment when I saw her in town, almost a month after she left. She gained weight, looked tired, and her face was different, like she'd been crying or stressing out. I felt a mix of anger and pity. I wanted to go up to her to tell her. She'd lost everything because of her own selfishness. But I didn't. I just kept walking, pretending I hadn't seen her. I realized I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she still affected me. Instead, I focused on my own healing. I started going to therapy, talking about everything. The betrayal, the hurt, the anger. It helped more than I thought it would. One thing that really surprised me was how many other people had been through similar hell. I heard stories from friends, colleagues, even strangers about their own betrayals. I thought I was alone in this, that no one could understand the depth of pain I was feeling. Turns out, betrayal cuts deep, no matter who you are. That made me feel a little less isolated and a little more human. I also realized how important it was to have a support system, whether through friends, family, or just talking openly about what I'd been through. Bottling it up only made everything worse. As I moved forward, I started to see that this whole experience was a wake-up call, about trust, about boundaries, about what I want in a partner. I don't regret the years I spent with Lisa. I only regret not seeing the warning signs earlier. Now, I know that if someone shows you who they really are, whether it's through lies, cheating, or manipulation, you have to believe them. Ignoring it only makes things worse. I also learned that revenge isn't about hurting her anymore. It's about protecting myself and making sure I never let anyone do this to me again. Now, I'm trying to rebuild my confidence, piece together what's left of me after everything. I know I'll never forget what she did, but I also know I can move on. I've realized that I don't need someone who lies and cheats. I need someone who actually cares, who's honest and respectful. I don't want to carry this pain forever, but I will carry the lessons. I hope anyone reading this who's been betrayed like I was understands. Trust your gut, stay true to yourself, and don't let anyone make you feel like you're the problem. Because in the end, it's their choice to cheat, lie, and betray, not yours. Looking back now, I realize that this whole ordeal changed me in ways I never expected. I used to think that love was about trust and loyalty, about never doubting the person you're with. Turns out, it's more about knowing your worth and recognizing when someone isn't worth your time or your heart. Lisa's betrayal was a punch to the gut, but it also woke me up. It made me see that I'd been blind, too eager to see the good in her when she was clearly capable of deception. I've come to accept that sometimes people reveal their true colors when they think no one is watching. Lisa thought she could get away with her lies, her cheating, and her manipulations, and in a way she did. But I've learned that the price of betrayal isn't just losing a relationship. It's losing a part of yourself if you don't stand up and fight for what's right. For me, that meant cutting her out of my life and focusing on healing. I've learned to be more cautious, more aware of red flags, and most importantly, I've learned to value myself enough not to accept betrayal or disrespect. Now I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I'm reconnecting with friends, rediscovering hobbies I'd abandoned, and setting boundaries I should have had from the start. The pain still lingers sometimes, especially when I see couples happy and unaware of the darkness that can quietly sneak into even the strongest relationships. But I hold on to the lessons I've learned. Honesty is everything, and anyone who doesn't respect that doesn't deserve my trust. Most importantly, I've realized that revenge isn't about hurting her anymore. It's about reclaiming my dignity, proving to myself that I'm stronger than the betrayal. I don't need to destroy her to move on. I just need to move on without her. That's the real victory. The betrayal showed me the kind of person I don't want to be, and it pushed me to become someone who values himself more. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the signs. And when it all falls apart, don't be afraid to walk away and start over. Because in the end, the only person you really owe loyalty to is yourself. Life is too short to waste on someone who lies, cheats, and manipulates. I've learned that the hard way. Now I'm just grateful to be finally free.